Hi everyone, this is Elena of the Witches Box, and I'm here today with another episode of Witch Booktube, and we're going to be talking about two books today. These two books I sent out for the Witches Book subscription for the month of November. And I sent it out in November specifically because I wanted them to be in people's hot hands before December actually hit, because it kind of just will bring you into the winter season. I want to show you what the books are. Here we go. So, The Old Magic of Christmas by Elena Rego. And this one is The Great Wheel Winter by Jo Graham. Here we go. The reason why I'm doing this late is because, it's not really late, it's just at the end of November, is because last night we did our Witch Book Coven live gathering, and both authors joined us for a discussion of the book, and it was amazing. And I'd like to wait until that happens in order to do the little Witch Booktube review / video, because it always adds so much to the whole conversation regarding both of the books that we do. So really quickly, for those of you who don't know, we have a Witch Book subscription. So you get 2 books a month, $30 a month. You get the books, you get access to a forum where you can talk about the books and the reading with other people who are also reading those books. And then on top of that, you get invited to the live Witch Book Coven gathering that happens at the end of each of those months, where we bring in the authors and we talk about the books, and we talk to the authors about how they wrote the books and all of the background and information that comes from what they wrote and gave us. So it's always an amazing process, and every time it ends, I'm always sad that we're just done with the live, because there's just something so fun about talking with the authors. So these two books were no different. I picked these books for a couple of different reasons. I loved them both. Very different. It's very different reading. I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to read you the bio for the author and then talk about it, and I'll do the same thing with this one. So, Elena Rego writes and lectures on a wide variety of arcane topics. She is a longtime library employee and professional craft instructor who teaches classes on candle making, broom making, and other old-time homemaking arts. She lives in New Providence, New Jersey. And then Jo Graham has practiced in pagan and hermetic traditions for more than 30 years, including leading an eclectic circle for nearly a decade. She has studied the classical world extensively and today mainly works in traditions based on the Hellenistic cult of Isis. Jo lives with her family in North Carolina. She is the author of 25 books. We're going to get a little bit into her other books at the end, because it was kind of a fun, derailed conversation that we had on our live last night, and I wanted to share that with you. So these books are very different, and part of the choice was I just, not just do I want to make sure to choose and send out books on witchcraft that are beyond the 101, that go deeper into a topic, so that we are doing more intermediate to advanced work, but that just go beyond what we're finding every single day out there in the witch book genre. But I also want to find things and share them when they are what feels to me to be uncommon, a new perspective, a bigger view. And this book absolutely did that. So what's interesting about this book, and I'm still, quite frankly, digesting the whole of it, but we have the Wheel of the Year as an agricultural metaphor that we impose on the year that we live, the scheduling, the environment that we live in, but also our spiritual journey, right? So let's say from spring to summer, it's all about the new birth, the new shoots coming out of the earth, the waxing energetic of the solar calendar. Summer hits, we're at the peak of the fire energy, right? So we have all of these known themes around that particular cycle, which is the cycle of the year. Within the cycle of the year, which is the cycle of the sun, we've got 12 to 13 cycles of the moon that happen each month in that year, right? We have those cycles. We also talk, not as commonly, but it's a fairly known thing. We deal with cycles in terms of like our Saturn return every, what is it? Is it every 27 and a half, 29 and a half, 28 and a half years? Ish, around there. I don't remember. I'm not an astrologer, but we have a solar return. We have a cycle of our lives that completes and begins a new one. So we have those types of cycles. This particular cycle, and it speaks to the winter that we are in now, but not the winter of the solar cycle, speaks to the cycles of the saeculum, which is I want to say that it's a Roman cosmology that looks at cycles in 80-year increments, that's ruled by something bigger. And so rather than basing the cycle, on the visual evidenced seasonal cycles that we experience day to day, this book goes into what is happening, what was happening historically, what were the themes in society and history 80 years ago. We are in that place again. We're in that place now. And usually, taking that map, you can see different historical sociological patterns that play out over and over and over again. For those of us who are not 80 and above, we wouldn't have the perspective of, oh yeah, we've gone through this before. For most of us, historically, things are kind of up in the air. We're in a crisis period right now. We feel like it's very easy to feel like, holy crap, the world's burning to the ground. Are we even going to survive this? This book speaks to a much broader view perspective that would say, of course, we're going to live through this because we've been through this kind of upheaval before. When you look at the cycles from this far out, you see historically that these things happen cyclically. So this book was such a game changer in terms of perspective, in terms of really pulling back to look at the whole history of humanity and seeing what those patterns are that are beyond the yearly patterns that we go through, or the year or the monthly lunar cycles that we go through, right? We're used to seeing cycles and patterns in a much more microcosmic view. This pulls it back. There are a lot of exercises here in this book that have us excavating what our ancestral history is. What are the stories of those older people, the oldest people that we know, and how that relates to where we might be in the cycle right now that we don't have as younger people perspective on. It was really a fascinating book, well written. I really recommend it. It shifted my perspective in a really interesting way, and I really appreciated that. So this is what this is about, and this is the book. And then there was this. I want all of you to have this book. This book was it's interesting because talking to Linda last night, the author, the whole premise of this book, you know what, I'm going to read the back so that you get an idea of what this book is. 'Tis the season for witches, elves, and a legion of ghosts. This is kind of the dark and twisty version of Christmas and Yule, which is so fascinating, but so cool. Not so very long ago, Yuletide was as much a chilling season of ghosts and witches as it was a festival of goodwill. In the old magic of Christmas, you'll rub elbows with veiled spirits, learn the true perils of elves, and discover a bestiary of enchanted creatures. Rife with the more frightful characters from folklore and the season's most petulant ghosts, this book takes you on a spooky sleigh ride from the silvered firs of a winter forest to the mirrored halls of the Snow Queen. Along the way, you'll discover how to bring the festivities into your home with cookie recipes, craft instructions, as well as tips for delving more deeply into your relationship with the unseen. I loved this book. And in talking with Linda last night, whenever someone would say, like, this kind of freaked me out reading about this, she was very elated to hear that, because the whole point is to really convey the folk tales and the mythologies around this time of the year, around the winter season, and how it was not all like mistletoe and twinkly lights. There were spirits and witches and elves and all sorts of sprites all around doing mischievous, dark things. And these are the stories from all around I would say probably the entire European, both Eastern, Northern European, and Western European lands. For me, which was really interesting, because yes, there are dark stories in this book, there was something about it that felt very cozy. And I didn't want it to come across as offensive, because I don't want it to sound like, oh, it's so cute, cozy. No, I mean, there was some kind of there was dark stuff in this book, absolutely. But there was something about reading a book about the winter season and about the dark forest and about the ice and the snow while you're like cocooned by a fire in a warm place, reading about all these scary things. To me, that felt very winter cozy in a way that I really love. Maybe it might give you nightmares. I don't know. But I loved it for that reason. I loved that these were new stories. Like, I mean, I've read quite a lot of mythical stories, part of our European folklore. Like, I have read quite a bit. There are stories that we are all kind of familiar with, even in their various incarnations. The stories in this book I had not read. There was I think maybe 3 that were familiar to me. The rest are not. this author did a gorgeous job of excavating and treasure hunting for these stories in who knows how many tomes she must have combed through. So I enjoyed it for that reason. I also enjoyed it because it felt like this is a beautiful addition to the stories we tell each other during this time of the year. I loved it as a way of revitalizing these old stories that we haven't been talking about, we haven't been sharing with each other. So I really love this book for that reason. I feel like it just adds a beautiful layer to the festivities where we're all, I mean, in my fantasy life, we're all kind of curled into a warm home with either candles lit or the fireplace lit with twinkle lights around while it's really cold outside, and we're talking about these stories, we're sharing these stories, we're reading these stories to each other. So for me, it was just a beautiful work of art. The author is also writing a couple of others, I think, along this line. I really, I can't say enough of it. This is like definitely one of those books that we should all have, especially if we just love this time of the year. We want to do this. And this is interesting because it just came to me. You know, we have, when the fall hits, we're all, for the most part, so thrilled about, oh, Samhain's coming, Hallows is coming, and we're coming into that time of the year where things get spooky. And then once that's over, somehow the script changes. And now it's all about the twinkle lights and the tree and the renewal and the coming back of the light. And it's very festive, but there's no mention anymore about what's going on in the world of the unseen. It's like all of a sudden we forget about that, even though we were so deeply entrenched in what was going on in the unseen world during Hallows. That continues, especially as we go into the darker time of the year. This continues that story. I don't know why, it just felt so good to read. I loved it. It was such a beautiful ride that while I was reading it too, I didn't want it to end. I was like, oh, I don't want to leave this like cool space of reading these stories. So obviously I loved this book. I highly recommend it. Get it. It should be in everyone's winter book selection that you pull out every winter and read. There are crafts and recipes in here as well. It flows really well, beautifully. The old magic of Christmas, I'm just telling you, go get it. There'll be a link to this below and all the other books. Then I want to share with you, just as a side thing, because you never know what you're going to get when you participate in one of our live gatherings. I just read Joe's bio to you, and it's a short version of it. Joe writes fiction and nonfiction, has written another book on the Seculum and the Wheel of the Year. So definitely I'll have links to that below. But Joe has also written quite a bit sci-fi and has written in... I don't know the structure, but she is, I think, either one of the writers for MGM, but has written for the storyline and books on Stargate Atlantis and Stargate SG-1. I kind of geeked out about that because I'm a Stargate fan. And then there was talk about how she also writes fanfic under a different name and all the ins and outs about fanfiction. We went into a whole conversation about that, which I just loved. And it was funny because every once in a while we'd pause, like, are we really talking about this? We were originally talking about winter and magic and witchcraft, and now we're talking about fanfic and we're talking about all these things. But that just kind of goes to show you that just about anything can happen when we get together on our lives. So if you are not subscribed to the Witches Books subscription, but you do subscribe now, which I highly recommend because we have a whole year's worth of amazing things coming up in this book subscription, you get to go back into our archives and watch the recordings of all of the live book gatherings that you've missed. And this is one of them. I just thought that the way this conversation ended was so much fun because some of us are total nerds and we just completely nerded out on Stargate and writing what is fan fiction, writing fan fiction. We even went into slash and het and the whole thing. I mean, there was just a lot going on there, and it was a lot of fun. So if you're already subscribed and you didn't know, you can go back into the archives of videos and watch all those. I would recommend watching this if you're interested in any of that. And also, if you haven't subscribed, but you will, and you do, and you have, and you're going to, you can also watch all of the ones that we have from the past so that you can catch up, because the forum holds still all the threads of all the books that we've read. You can participate in those long after the fact, right? Because we have people who are reading the books that we read last year now, and then going back and having conversations about it. So all of that is available to you. Again, these two books, great winter reading. One is probably heavier. Well, no, one is definitely heavier than the other in a different way, but also expansive and enlightening, and also just a treasure. I think this is like one of those treasures that you need to keep. I love loved it. Especially for those of you who love to collect stories and of our past. I think it's just a beautiful mythology and folklore, all that good stuff. I just loved it so much. All right, that's it for today. We have a bunch of things happening. Just be on the lookout for announcements in the newsletter from now probably through January. There's just going to be different things that will be happening and dropping, and you don't want to miss it. So if you have not subscribed to our newsletter, please do so down below so that you can get all these announcements as they come. Let me know if you've read these books. I would love to hear any comments down below. And if you know of any new books out there that give these great stories and a new twist on them, I'd love to hear about them too, because I'm always, looking for more books to read. All right, my loves, have a wonderful day. Keep reading, and I will see you somewhere on the interwebs